everybody. Today I'm going to read a favorite story of mine that called The Bear That Heard Crying. And this is based on a true story. And I'll just read you a little part about what it says. The story of Sarah Witcher is true. Sarah was only 3 years old when she got lost in the woods near Warren, New Hampshire in June of 1783. This story is special to me because Sarah Witcher was my great-great-great-great-great aunt. Her brother Jeremiah, born in 1790, 7 years after Sarah was lost, was my great-great-great-great-grandfather. No record is given as to what happened to the bear. I hope it lived a long and contented life. So this is called The Bear That Heard Crying. On a warm afternoon in June of 1783, Sarah Witcher got lost in the woods. The day began like any other Sunday. No axes rang in the great pine woods because Sundays were a day of rest. A church hadn't been built yet on Pine Hill. So Papa, Joseph, Reuben, John, Betty, and Sarah, who was 3 years old, sat under the trees near their cabin while Mama read from the Bible. "It's a beautiful day," Papa said to Mama. "Let's walk to the summit and see Chase and Hannah's new baby." Sarah loved her Uncle Chase. He took her for walks in the woods and showed her bobcat tracks and fox dens. And once he took her to a hollow tree on Pine Hill that bees had filled with honey. Mama put on her hat, and she and Papa walked along the path to the woods. Sarah ran after them. "I'm coming too," she said. "No, Sarah, it's too far for you to walk. You must stay home with Betty and your brothers." Sarah meant to be a good girl, but she wanted to see Uncle Chase and the new baby. So when Mama and Papa were out of sight, Sarah followed them. Now this is their family sitting under the tree, and Mama was reading the Bible to them earlier in the day before they left for their uncle's house. She walked along Berry Brook. Brook trout swam in the deep green pools. High over her head, squirrels scolded her. The trees grew so tall, Sarah was sure they touched the sky. "I'll pick some flowers for Aunt Hannah," Sarah thought. She was so busy looking for wildflowers that she wandered from the path into the deep woods. She ate some wild strawberries and picked bunches of wood sorrel and dogtooth violets. A bobcat leaped over a log, scaring her, but he bounded past, chasing a rabbit. Sarah walked on and on. Blackberry brambles scratched her hands and her feet and her legs. "Oh, I hope Mama and Papa come back soon," she thought. But Mama and Papa never came. Darkness crept into the woods. The wind moaned through the trees like a crying animal. It made Sarah want to cry just to hear it. She was too tired to walk anymore, so she sat on a mossy rock. She tried to be brave, but the woods seemed too big and too dark, and before she knew it, she was crying. She was hungry and so tired she wanted to go home. What was keeping Mama and Papa so long? And that was when she first was walking in the woods and she saw the bobcat, and there's the rabbit that the bobcat was chasing. Look at her just picking flowers, and then it got to be night, and it was very, very scary. Sarah heard branches cracking. She held her breath listening. Something was crashing through the bushes, coming right at her. A big black head poked through the bushes. 2 black eyes looked at Sarah, and Sarah laughed. "A big black dog has found me," she thought. "He will show me the way home." But it wasn't a dog that had found Sarah. It was a shaggy bear, as black as the night. But Sarah thought it was a dog. Look at that big bear. Whoa, Sarah was glad to see the dog. Now she didn't feel so lonely. She patted his long brown nose and she hugged him around the neck. The bear sniffed her face, then licked the strawberry juice from her hands and the blood from her feet where the blackberry brambles had scratched her. Sarah put her head on his shoulder, and the bear lay down beside her. Sarah snuggled into his thick, warm fur. "Papa and Mama will find me tomorrow," she thought. And then Sarah fell asleep. Oh, look at that. She's all snuggled up with the bear that she thinks is a dog. Back on the path, Mama and Papa were hurrying home. The children ran to greet them. "Why did you leave Sarah up at Uncle Chase's?" Reuben asked. "We didn't leave her. We told her to stay home." "She hasn't been here all day," Joseph cried. "We thought she had gone with you." Mama's face turned white. "Sarah's lost in the woods." Reuben grabbed the dinner horn and bolted for the woods. Mama ran to the Richardsons, their nearest neighbors, for help. Other neighbors came. They shouted into the forest, "Sarah! Sarah!" But she didn't answer back. No one slept that night. Papa searched the woods in the dark, and Mama sat by the open door, listening for Sarah. In the morning, the news of the lost child traveled all over the mountains and the valley. All who heard it left their farms and hurried to Pine Hill. Some of the neighbors left their oxen yoked in the fields. Joseph Patch came with his long-barreled gun. For 3 days, people searched for Sarah through the darkest forest to Moose Hillock Mountain, up to Oak Falls, and all along the path up to the river where it tumbled out of the dark ravines along Black Mountain. But every night they returned home, discouraged, tired, hungry. They had not found Sarah. Oh, they really were searching so hard. Look at the men, they're everywhere, just trying to find her and calling out, "Sarah! Sarah! Sarah, where are you?" But they didn't find her. Late in the afternoon, one of the men burst out of the woods. He was breathing hard from running. "I found Sarah's footprints near Berry Brook," he said, "but there were bear tracks next to them." "Oh, she's been torn to pieces," several in the crowd said. Mama covered her face with her hands. The children looked at each other but didn't say a word. "She will never be found," someone said. "We might as well give up." "No," said Mama, lifting her head. "Don't give up yet. Please, just look for her for one more day." The searchers were sure that the bear had killed Sarah, but no one wanted to say that to Mama, so they agreed. At daylight, the woods filled again with people. Mrs. Richardson stayed at the Witchker cabin to bake a bushel of beans to feed the searchers. She was busy by the fire when she heard a knock at the door. A man stood there. He was dusty and tired and looked as if he had walked a great distance. "My name's Heath," he said. "I can find the child." Just then Joseph Patch came into the clearing. "What makes you think you can find her when we've looked for 4 days with no luck?" And there is the man who thought he could find her. "Last evening I heard that a little girl was lost," Mr. Heath said. 3 times during the night I dreamed I found her lying under a great pine tree where the path crosses Berry Brook. A bear was guarding her." "I don't know as I believe it," Mr. Patch said, "but I'll take you along the path." When the path crossed Berry Brook, Mr. Heath stopped. He looked around, then he plunged through the bushes. Mr. Patch followed him. There was Sarah, sleeping under a large pine tree, just as Mr. Heath said she would be. There were bear tracks all around her. Sarah opened her eyes and sat up. "I want to go to Mama," she said. Look at that. They found Sarah. What a miracle. What a wonderful thing. Joseph Patch fired his gun into the air, and then he picked her up and carried her home. Everyone they met ran ahead of them, shouting and waving their hats. They all talked about Mr. Heath's wonderful dream. Papa and Mama heard the shot and hurried back to the cabin. They heard the shouts of the crowd. "John! Sarah! We have found her!" And then they saw Sarah in Joseph Patch's arms. Oh, what a wonderful reunion. Mama fainted, Papa couldn't say a word, but he smoked his pipe as hard as he could. Joseph, Reuben, and John whooped and hollered, and Betty clapped her hands. "Sarah's home," she sang. Oh, look at that happy family. Wow. "She must be famished, poor thing," Mrs. Richardson said, and hurried to fix some soup. Papa carried Sarah into the house. He sat in the rocker. Look at that. He's just holding her so tightly. Oh my goodness. Did you see anyone in the woods? Papa asked her. A big black dog stayed with me every night, Sarah said. He was friendly and his fur was warm. Papa looked at Mama. Mama looked at Papa. And no one told Sarah that a large black dog had been a bear. Never had such a feast been prepared. Mrs. Richardson brought out her pans of baked beans, and the women made venison stew and hasty pudding and cornbread with honey. Oh, just look at that feast to celebrate Sarah coming home and that she was safe. What a wonderful time it was. Papa said a prayer of thanksgiving, and everyone sang. All the men blew horns and fired their guns over and over until all the powder on Pine Hill was used up. So great was the joy that Sarah was found. Oh, what a wonderful, wonderful day. And to think that this was a true story just makes it all the more special. The bear that heard crying. Oh, I love that. And one more story I'm going to read today from George and Martha called The Clock. George gave Martha a present for her birthday. It's a cuckoo clock, said George. So I see, said Martha. It's nice and loud, said George. So I hear, said Martha. Do you like it? Asked George. Have you ever seen a cuckoo clock? We had one on when I was a girl, and my brother had one, and my aunt had one. The next day, George went to Martha's house. Martha was not at home, and the cuckoo clock was not on the wall. Maybe she likes it so much she took it to be with her, said George. Just then he heard a faint cuckoo, cuckoo, cuckoo. To George's surprise, the cuckoo clock was at the bottom of Martha's laundry basket. Do you think that noise started to bother her? Maybe. When Martha returned, she couldn't look George in the eye. It must have fallen in by mistake. I do hope it isn't broken. Oh, not at all, said George. The paint isn't even chipped. The clock works just dandy, and the cuckoo hasn't lost its splendid voice. Would you like to borrow it? Asked Martha. George was delighted. He found just the right spot for it, too. Wasn't that considerate of Martha to lend me her clock, thought George. Cuckoo, said the clock. What fun. And I'm just going to stop there. And I want to see who's watching and listening to stories today. Oh, I see all of you out there. Hi, Garrett. Hi, Brielle. Oh, there's Dylan and Owen. And hi, Joanna. Oh, Nathan's there, and Shane and Ellery. Even Abby and Megan are watching today. Wow. Greg, hi. I didn't see you at first. You've gotten so tall. And hi, Harper. It's so good to see you and all of the rest of you boys and girls. Remember to keep reading. Okay, it's great to read. Be readers. Readers are leaders. Can you say that? Readers are leaders. So keep on reading. And good night for now. I love you all. Bye.
Amen.